Hello everyone. Before we really get into this video, I want to say that this was originally meant to be a part of my video explaining the biology of every Subnautica creature, but it turns out I had way more to say about the Ghost Leviathan than I initially thought. For this video, I had to draw on knowledge learned in multiple disciplines including marine chemistry and geophysics, and had to go all the way back to the origin of the Earth and our own solar system to fully explain the Ghost Leviathan. So strap in, because it gets pretty dense. As for the full Subnautica analysis video, I've been working on that a lot more recently and hope to get it out by the end of 2025, but no guarantees. Regardless, when it does finally come out, the quality of the science you see in this video is what you can expect to see in that one. If you're looking forward to that, make sure to give me a sub so you don't miss it when it comes out. That kind of thing can go a long way for a channel as small as mine. Also, while we're at it, YouTube added this hype feature thing. I don't really know what it does different from the like button, but I guess you should hit that too. The Ghost Leviathan is one of the most iconic creatures in Subnautica, and for good reason. It's the third largest creature in the game, with the adults just barely shorter than the sea dragon Leviathan. The cry it makes when charging its prey is arguably more memorable than the Reaper's roar, and this creature is the sole reason why many of us won't dare to go even near the crater's edge. But it's also the creature we know the most about. First of all, it's one of only 3 species in which we see multiple life stages occur naturally in the world, the others being the reefback and sea emperor leviathans. However, with those species we only have juveniles and adults present.
Are you sure about that?
We see 4 Ghost Leviathan life stages in the game, and I propose that there are 6 total. Let's introduce them now. The first life stage is an egg, nestled within the branches of the Lost River's Cove Tree. Side note, I do not think the Cove Tree is a plant, as I do not think it is an autotroph. Rather, I think it more closely matches the characteristics often seen among fungi, feeding on the decomposing matter of dead organisms. The Lost River is chock full of that, and I think the Cove Tree has access to some exclusive biological remains, but I'll leave that for the end of the video. The second life stage we do not see in-game, but it would be the months or potentially up to a year following the Ghost Leviathan hatching from its egg, hunting the smaller fish within the Lost River. Stage 3 would be the ghost patrolling certain parts of the river, and would have them as the apex predator within the cave network. This is where the Ghost Leviathans gain their territorial tendencies, as they are still in a period of rapid growth and need to hoard as much food as possible for themselves. Stage 4 is what we see outside the Lost River, but still within the boundaries of the crater. Specifically, the 2 Ghost Leviathans seen in the Grand Reef, and the one in the northern Blood Kelp Zone. These ghosts have outgrown the Lost River and have ventured out in search of more food, as they are nearing their full size. Stage 5 are the terrifying adult Ghost Leviathans we see in the open waters surrounding the crater, labeled in-game as the Ecological Dead Zone, and known to the players as the Void. The Ghost Leviathans here are still considered territorial by the game, however are now planktivores, as this is the only food that can be sustainably found. In my original Subnautica analysis video, I stated that territorial planktivores don't really work in reality. However, I think I've found a way to make this work, which I will explain later. Finally, Stage 6 occurs post-copulation, when gravid Ghost Leviathans make their way to suitable nesting grounds to lay their eggs. With all of that explained, let's break down every life stage and see how it could theoretically work. The eggs of Ghost Leviathans are very unique. The largest one we see in the Cove Tree is significantly larger than what could feasibly fit inside a Ghost Leviathan, especially if it had multiple of them. The wiki suggests that the eggs grow after being laid, which at first I could not believe, as no egg on Earth grows in size after being laid. However, I hypothesize that the Ghost Leviathan is a special case. You see, the only place we see Ghost Leviathan eggs is among the giant Cove Tree's branches, suggesting that the 2 species share a symbiotic relationship. But would this be mutual, commensal, or parasitic? I propose that it is mutual, wherein both species benefit from their relationship. The Ghost Leviathan benefits as it gains a suitable place to lay its eggs, but what does the Cove Tree get out of this, I hear you asking? To answer that, you'll have to wait until later, specifically Life Stage 6. Now, as for the eggs growing after being laid, the amniotic fluid within the egg has some of the nutrients required to continue growing the embryo inside. For the sake of this hypothesis, the Ghost Leviathan has evolved amniotic fluid in its eggs, and the outer casing remains a gelatinous membrane to allow for growth. However, the egg itself does not contain all the nutrients necessary to reach full size, and this is where the Cove Tree steps in. The Cove Tree actually provides nutrients to the egg in order to pick up the slack for the egg's growth, in what is the most incredible case of a surrogate mother ever. This may make the Ghost Leviathans seem like parasites to the Cove Tree rather than a mutual partner. However, the juveniles that are eventually born are seen predating on ghost rays, which graze upon the Cove Tree, so in the long run, the Cove Tree benefits. When the Ghost Leviathans do hatch, it likely breaks apart the Cove Tree, which I propose is how the spores of this enormous fungus spread, another benefit provided by the Ghost Leviathans. As for where the Cove Tree was, the mycelium under the substrate remains, as the Cove Tree is simply the fruiting body. The Cove Tree will sprout up again, and when another Ghost Leviathan comes along to lay its eggs, the smaller, younger Cove Tree will be waiting. Stage 2 of the Ghost Leviathan life cycle is its infancy stage, somewhere between right after hatching and reaching a size sustainably larger than the second largest carnivore in the Lost River, the river prowler. As we cannot observe its behavior in-game due to it not existing, I'll do my best to paint you a picture. The infant ghost would likely feed upon any bleeders, spinefish, mesmers, and even other Ghost Leviathans if the opportunity arose. You see, the Ghost Leviathan is a cannibal. As growth is so paramount to its survival, even its own species is not off the menu. Furthermore, as the Cove Tree is the only location we see Ghost Leviathan eggs, and are almost certainly from the same mother, the cannibalized ghosts are likely members of its same clutch, its own brothers and sisters. As we can see, the eggs grow at different rates, and so this large one in the middle will most definitely hatch first and eat these two. There are likely more unseen eggs within the Cove Tree and emerge when it is broken, but those may very well get eaten too. It is here that I want to address the Ghost Leviathan's appearance, and I think it's perfect. The Lost River is full of carcasses and fossilized remains, and the Ghost Leviathan perfectly fits in with that aesthetic, which not only works from a gameplay standpoint, but from a survival one as well. The Lost River is an extremely competitive environment, and blending into your surroundings is a very common survival strategy. As the surviving Ghost Leviathans grow larger, they will eventually move away from their hatching grounds and into other parts of the cave, far enough away from each other so as not to compete, and developing their territorial behavior. I mentioned earlier that the ghosts are in this stage of their life for the first few months or up to a year. And that may seem like too short a time, but the Ghost Leviathan falls into the Type 3 population structure, in which many individuals die off young, with only a few reaching adulthood and reproducing. It is of course not as extreme as seen in this graphic, as not many Ghost Leviathans are born to begin with, but it still stands that most do not make it to reproduce. In regards to the parental strategy, Ghost Leviathans are more of R strategists than K strategists. This is because despite having relatively few offspring, the mother does not stick around to raise them, instead relying on the Cove Tree and the instincts of their young in order to carry on their genetic code. There's a phenomenon in ecology known as pace of life syndrome, in which the environmental factors around an animal influence how quickly they grow up versus how quickly they reach sexual maturity. In the case of the Ghost Leviathan, living in an extremely hostile environment, they grow up extremely quickly so as to avoid being eaten, and so they can safely reach sexual maturity. The third stage of the Ghost Leviathan's life, and the second one we see in-game, is as a juvenile, and the apex predator of the Lost River cave system. While enormous, it has not yet finished growing, and will soon exit the Lost River. The juvenile ghost can be seen charging after river prowlers, ghost rays, the player, all submarines, and even warpers to continue feeding and growing. It is also here that we really see the Ghost Leviathan act territorial, incapable of being lured around the map like you can with Reapers. However, this life stage does not last for long, as the Ghost Leviathan will quickly outgrow the Lost River and into its next life stage. The fourth stage of the Ghost Leviathan's life cycle is its young adult phase, in which they occupy what is essentially the same niche as the juveniles in the Lost River, that being as the apex predator. However, they simply do it in either the blood kelp or Grand Reef. Here, their diet changes from river prowlers and ghost rays to crab squids, ant eels, and even small schools of fish, a bit of a prelude to their adult diet. Unfortunately, the player and their vehicles are still not off the menu. But while the Ghost Leviathan started its life close to the center of the crater, it has moved further and further towards its edge, and now there is only one place for the young adult Ghost Leviathan to go. Fully grown adult Ghost Leviathans are the sixth stage in their life cycle, and are found exclusively in the aptly named Ecological Dead Zone. Their diet has completely changed from one of a carnivore to that of a planktivore, feeding exclusively on plankton around the crater's edge. It is here that I previously struggled with the believability of the Ghost Leviathan. Adult Ghost Leviathans are apparently planktivores, but also territorial. I'm sorry, but that does not work out. Planktivores cannot be territorial when they are this massive. They need to be constantly moving around the ocean to find more plankton to eat. However, there are a couple of solutions to this I've come up with to allow Ghost Leviathans to retain their territorial nature. Good morning, class. Welcome to Oceanography 101. Today's lesson is going to be about oceanic currents, thermohaline circulation, upwelling, plankton, and the origin of our solar system. I'll be your professor for the day, and we're going to find out how qualified I am to teach any of this. Okay, now strap in, because it's going to get pretty dense. Let's take a look at this graphic. It shows what is known as thermohaline circulation, which I will now briefly explain. Essentially, surface water reaches the North Atlantic and sinks down to the bottom of the ocean, where it travels back down towards southern Africa, and then either north into the Indian Ocean to reach the surface again around India, or it keeps flowing in the deep into the Pacific and reaching the surface by Alaska and Siberia. Here's some evidence of this. What I am showing you is phosphate concentration at 4,000 meters. Phosphate is an important nutrient for phytoplankton production. It's lowest in the North Atlantic, as the water is just joining the deep water cycle and has had its phosphate used up. As the water circulates, organisms in the waters above die and sink, and phosphate is added to the cycle. It doesn't get used up because phytoplankton needs sunlight, so there's no phytoplankton to use the phosphate at 4 kilometers down. Now take a look at this graphic. It shows the overall circulation of water at the surface of the ocean. Because of the Coriolis effect caused by the Earth's rotation, water flows from east to west along the equator, the part of the Earth with the largest radius. When the water reaches land, it's deflected towards the poles, the area of the Earth with the smallest radius. In the northern hemisphere, this causes water to circulate clockwise and counterclockwise in the southern hemisphere. Depending on latitude, winds move differently. Let me explain. Air from somewhere in the tropics, it changes throughout the year, will rise and flow towards the poles as a result of the same physical principles causing water to do this. For this example, let's just say it's at the equator. At first, it's hot and full of water vapor, but as it moves away from the equator, it cools off, and as a result, cannot hold as much water vapor and releases it as rain. This is why the tropics are so rainy. By the time it reaches 30 degrees north or south latitude, it is cooled off and has no more water vapor. Because it is cool, it sinks back to the surface. Side note, this is why areas around 30 degrees north and south have deserts. Think of the American Southwest, or Africa above and below the tropics. Now, much like oceanic currents, surface wind rotates clockwise in the north and counterclockwise in the south, again as a result of the Coriolis effect deflecting air towards the poles as the Earth rotates from east to west. The same phenomenon at the equator occurs from 60 degrees north and south latitude, with that air flowing to the poles and the 30s. This is why Washington and Oregon are known for being rainy, and the poles are both deserts, but that's a topic for a different day. All this is to say that wind affects surface currents, deflecting them overall by 90 degrees to the right in the north and 90 degrees to the left in the south. Why does this matter? Upwelling. Upwelling is caused by wind blowing away from the land, which in turn drives water at the very surface away from the shore, which is filled by the water below taking its place. That water is rich in nutrients, nutrients being inorganic molecules utilized by primary producers like plants and algae, and for our purposes, phytoplankton. As I mentioned before, phytoplankton need two things to bloom: sunlight and nutrients. Blooms occur at all times of the year, but not all in the same place. Because the Earth rotates at a 23.5 degree axial tilt, the cause of the seasons, the Sun follows what is known as the ecliptic, which is the imaginary line on Earth where the Sun is most directly facing, rather than Earth's celestial equator. Also, blooms toward the poles are more extreme than those closer to the equator. For example, towards the Arctic, the blooms occur once the Sun starts becoming visible, and are the most extreme blooms as the Sun has been completely gone during the cold months and there has been zero production. Blooms in the tropics are the most mild, as that region has had sunlight fairly consistently and production has been moderate year-round. But upwelling can tip the scale somewhat. Areas with upwelling can have stronger and longer-lasting phytoplankton blooms as a result of consistent nutrient depositing by the currents, and few regions of Earth have upwelling as significant as the Humboldt Current off the coast of Peru. It's got everything going for it: strong southeast trade winds pushing water offshore, a very steep continental slope as a result of the offshore subduction zone, and it's far along the path of thermohaline circulation, allowing for more nutrient buildup. Don't believe me? Here's a graphic showing the previously mentioned phosphate now at the surface. Do I even need to say anything? Look at that upwelling, going halfway across the Pacific. As for my last topic, the beginning of the solar system. When a solar system forms, there's a lot of matter that hasn't really condensed into super large masses. But over time, the little gravity of each bit of mass has pulled more mass towards it, gains more gravity, and it snowballs into asteroids, planets, and dwarf planets. There used to be a small planet in our solar system named Theia, about as big as Mars, that collided with Earth and disrupted its rotation, angling it at that 23.5 degrees we have today that causes the seasons. It also sent a huge amount of debris into space that eventually became Earth's moon. Now, this may make Earth's axial tilt, and therefore the seasons, seem somewhat unique. However, almost every planet in our solar system rotates at a noticeable tilt. Mars is at 25.2 degrees, Saturn is at 26.7, which is why its rings are at an angle. The most extreme is Uranus, at 97.8 degrees, caused by similar circumstances as Earth, and it results in its poles having 42 year-long days and nights. Okay, that should cover everything you need to know. At least it better. I got 3 college notebooks in front of me telling me that I'm right. All of this is to say, I think that planet 4546b rotates at a tilt. But it may not be as extreme as the Earth's. In the base game, the days and nights are of equal length, meaning the game takes place when the Sun is most directly on the crater's latitude. In addition to this, Sector 0 in Subnautica below 0 has 15 minutes of day and only 5 of night, which could only be explained by an axial tilt. Also, I believe the upwelling caused by the crater, and there is most definitely upwelling, may be more extreme than any area seen on Earth. The water is coming up from at least 8 kilometers, and it looks like a near vertical rise, meaning the upwelling force is going to be absurdly strong. It is because of this that I want to formally revoke my statement that a territorial planktivore is impossible, and say that it might be possible for the Ghost Leviathan to remain territorial while switching to an exclusively planktivorous diet. Let me be clear, I am not saying that I think it's 100% airtight, just that it's not out of the realm of possibility. Even if we shrank the Ghost Leviathans to a size that could even exist with 4546b's gravitational pull, that's still a pretty massive animal to be sustained on plankton with just its own territory. Then again, there aren't too many places along the planet where it looks like water from the depths would reach the surface, so the water coming up to the crater would probably be extremely nutrient rich, more so than anything seen on Earth, so I give Ghost Leviathan Life Stage 5 a solid maybe in terms of its feasibility. The sixth stage of a Ghost Leviathan's life is when it will go out in search of a mate, leaving its territory and venturing out into open waters, calling out for other Ghost Leviathans that have reached this point of their life. We don't see them in game, but I expect that if one was ever encountered, that it would be entirely docile. It spent likely years or possibly decades engorging itself upon plankton, and now it's running off of its food stores. Plus, it's hundreds or thousands of miles away from its former territory, and doesn't care if other creatures come near it. I doubt there would be any kind of special mating ritual in which one sex has to prove its worth to the other. With creatures this large, there can't be that many out there, especially not within vocalizing range with their high-pitched calls not carrying for very far. When a male and female do find each other, they would make their way back towards one of the pair's original hatching grounds, much like a salmon. Which one's hatching grounds? I don't know, but I suspect the sex it was would be consistent among other Ghost Leviathan mated pairs. This takes us all the way back to the giant cove tree within the Lost River, which, as we will remember, was broken apart and likely just sprouting up again. The female would lay her eggs there to be encased by the budding fruit of the cove tree fungus, and start growing as we previously discussed. But instead of going back out to sea, the parents would instead remain as the eggs began developing, acting with extreme aggression towards anything they perceive to be a threat, whether it is or not. I hypothesize the Ghost Leviathans are semiparous organisms, using all of their energy to produce as many eggs as possible in their only clutch during their lives, increasing their reproductive success and maximizing the odds of having their genetic line continue. As a result of not eating, the parents would slowly waste away and perish while guarding their eggs, and the cove tree nursing them, much as an octopus mother does. Their bodies would be broken down over the years by decomposers like the blood crawler and amoeboid, and the detritus would be used by the cove tree to supply the growth of its budding fruit, as well as the Ghost Leviathan eggs it has been recruited to protect. The parents fiercely guarded the cove tree during the months and years it was small, and it will repay them by guarding and raising their young. Just like that, the Ghost Leviathan's life, as well as that of the cove tree, come full circle. An apex predator and a giant fungus working together in an instance of mutualism and coevolution scarcely seen to this degree in either popular media or real life. Thank you all so much for watching. I realize this was probably a lot more science than you bargained for when you first turned into this video, and I went through it somewhat quickly, so I apologize if it was a little overwhelming. Regardless, I think it was necessary to fully explain my hypothesis. The other Leviathans I'll be talking about in my full video, explaining every creature, will all have more time spent on each of them than most of the other animals, but the Ghost Leviathan segment reached something like 4 pages, and it was getting close to script length of some of my other videos, so I knew it needed to be something separate. In the end, this video ended up being 13 pages long, which would be more than like 20% of the other video dedicated to a single creature. Think I missed something in my explanation? Have your own hypothesis? Or do you have a potential video topic? Let me know in the comments. Like what you see? A like and sub, and now a hype too, I guess, are greatly appreciated. Anyway, that's all I got for you guys today. You all have yourselves a good one, and I hope you learned something.